Oh, god damn it.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I missed out on a lot of games last year.
Yes, I know. My channel's been dead for such a long time. God, I haven't made a video in about 5 months, have I? 5 months. It's been a long time. And because of how long it's been, I feel like I missed out on what could have been literally one of the best years for horror games ever. 2014, the year everybody loved. Okay, yes, sure. You could say 2014 was a bad year for video games in general, but for horror games, it was a freaking renaissance. Not only did we get a bunch of great indie horror games in 2014, but we also got a bunch of great mainstream horror games too. And that's like almost unheard of. In my opinion, it was a fantastic year, full of fantastic games. Unfortunately though, nobody actually seemed to notice, because everyone was too busy playing Five Nights at Freddy's to give a shit.
So let's give credit where it's due, shall we? As I give you my top 10 horror games of 2014. Also, just for the record, The Evil Within is not on this list. I didn't have time to play it last year. I'm sorry.
The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Yeah, I put The Binding of Isaac on a horror game list. You have a problem with that?
Well, why don't you go kill yourself?
So I tried to put this as low on the list as possible, since it isn't a real horror game. But seriously, I love The Binding of Isaac. I've always loved it, ever since it first came out. The Binding of Isaac by now is something so cool and so well known, there's almost no reason to even talk about it on the internet. A perfect Legend of Zelda styled action game with disgusting imagery, flawless gameplay, controversial subject matter, child abuse, murder, religion, occult, death, and suicide? And it all takes place in a basement? Edmund McMillen, how did you do that? How? You're like the freaking Lars von Trier of indie games. I love it. I don't know about you guys, but to me, The Binding of Isaac always seemed a little too perfect of a game to really warrant a remake. I mean, the original was fantastic. It played smoothly, it looked gorgeous, and it was just flawless inside and out. It was dark, spooky, depressing, mindlessly addicting. Just one of the best indie games I've ever played. So I never really understood why Edmund McMillen was so enthusiastic about remaking it, especially only 3 years after it just came out. But what do you know? This new remake is great. It offers so much polish and so many additions to the already classic original. The only question it actually leaves you with is whether or not Edmund himself will ever be able to top it. There are new monsters, new power-ups, new bosses, bigger rooms, bigger enemies, bigger challenges, and to top it all off, you can even play the game in co-op now. So much unnecessary perfection. I guess the only thing I don't like about it though, if anything, is the music. Oh, the new music is great, don't get me wrong. But it didn't need to be changed. The old soundtrack was literally spectacular. Way better than the new one. In fact, can we just give it a moment of our time? Please? Just for a minute? Oh, old Isaac's soundtrack, I'll never forget you. Bunker 16. This game is really difficult to talk about. Of all the good, scary horror games that came out in 2014, I think Bunker 16 was the first decent one I actually played. I actually found this game long before PewDiePie or anyone else made a video about it. Well, okay, not long before. I mean, it only took like 2 weeks for it to get popular. But still, I found this game right when it first came out. And originally, I was planning to make a video about it. But unfortunately, it's only about 30 minutes long. This is a short game, and there's not a whole lot I can say about it without spoiling what happens in it. Suffice it to say, in the game, you stumble upon an old airtight bunker while hiking through the mountains in a thunderstorm. Somehow, it seems you've locked yourself inside the bunker, and the door's sealed shut behind you. So now, you have to find a way out. And that's probably all I should tell you. Trust me, this game is free to download, and it's pretty damn good. For a horror game, it's quite unpredictable, and if I were to tell you anything else about it, I'd ruin it. So instead, I'm gonna show you a commercial for ice cream.
I eat little baby's ice cream. It keeps me young. It keeps me light on my feet. When you eat little baby's ice cream, you'll wink and nod and high-five each other with great enthusiasm. Little baby's ice cream.
You know, a lot of people who watch my videos probably think horror is my favorite gaming genre. But the thing is, that's not strictly true. I like just about any genre. From platformers, to strategies, to puzzle games, to whatever the hell this is games. But if I had to nail down my absolute favorite genre of all time, I don't think it would necessarily be horror. No, my favorite genre is actually 2D horror. That is, horror games that use pixel art, flat drawings, or pre-rendered graphics to get their story across. There aren't actually a lot of 2D horror games out there. They don't come around very often, and half the time, they're not even that scary. But luckily, this year, we got a few wonderful exceptions. One of which being Claire, the two-dimensional Silent Hill-esque indie side-scroller that totally feels like that other two-dimensional Silent Hill-esque indie side-scroller that came out a couple years ago.
Much originality.
Claire is an interesting game. It plays a lot like a real classic survival horror game, right down to the picking up and dropping items, mapping and exploring big empty locations, and even saving in a safe room. I love that! Classic 16-bit pixel art really is my favorite thing ever, and seeing it used to tell a sad, dark horror story with deep layers of human drama, twisted monsters, freaky imagery, and superb sound design, well, that's almost enough to make me cry. It's cool to see a game really understand the concept of old survival horror, and no less nail it down to a T. But it's not without its problems. The Silent Hill comparisons are almost inevitable, and this game really is so similar to Lone Survivor that it almost hurts. There's a lack of originality that hangs over Claire like an old sour smell, and I will admit, it sorta makes it hard for the game to stand out on its own. But hey, I still felt invested. The game's only 4 hours long, and the writing and story are so well done, it kept my attention the whole way through. And to be honest, I think I'm just happy to have another 2D horror game in my collection. So you know what? Thank you, Claire, for existing. That is all. Here we have another good 2D horror game, and one that's actually pretty close to freaking perfect. Behold, the sketchy black and white never-ending Nightmares. A game that looks like the Babadook's picture book if it were an animated Disney film from the 1920s. In this game, you play as a man named Thomas Smith, who seems to be stuck in a never-ending nightmare he can't wake up from. Couldn't have possibly seen that coming. At the beginning of the game, you find yourself walking through an old house full of shadows, ghosts, and monsters that seem to keep popping up out of nowhere. Later on, however, you start waking up in different beds, in different locations, and the whole experience starts to get weirder and weirder as time goes on.
You're still sleeping? You promised we'd meet for breakfast.
Oh.
Are you okay? You look upset.
I'm sorry. I just had a terrible nightmare.
Obviously, what really sells this game is the remarkable art style. and the way it actually manages to stay entertaining and impressive from beginning to end. There are all kinds of things you see in this game that you wouldn't expect to see. From things like this, to things like this, to things like this. Oh no. Apparently the designer of this game, Matt Gilgenbach, said he created Neverending Nightmares to represent his own struggles with obsessive-compulsive disorder. And I find that really strange, because I have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Like, to a horrible extent. It's one of the main reasons I never finish videos. And it's also the reason I used to overpronounce all my sentences like an idiot.
And while the game is so thin that the only real reason to play it is the art isn't thin at all.
God. But honestly, aside from the visuals being so insanely detailed, there's nothing about this game that really reminds me of OCD. But oh well, I guess it's different for everyone, right? Some people have to open and close the front door 100 times before they leave the house, and some people have to make gruesome horror games with detailed images of blood and gore. Ew. OCD, ladies and gentlemen. OCD. The next game on our list is one that may not even be a horror game, strictly speaking. Frankly, it's hard to say what this game is. It could be a lot of things. It could be a spooky ghost story. It could be a dark murder mystery. It could be an epic Lovecraft tale about gods from interdimensional worlds bringing about the end of existence. Let's just watch some of it and see what it's about.
Travis, tell me where Ethan is, now.
I'm giving the sleeper what he wants. What all of us want. Look, old man, you need to go home.
Sorry. The fact is, you won't know what The Vanishing of Ethan Carter is until you play it. This is a strange, beautiful looking game that's hard to define in words. I'm gonna try and keep this one short, because it's another one of those games that's more an unpredictable experience than anything. But to put it briefly, you play as a detective named Paul Prospero, who seems to have some strange supernatural ability to see into the past. When you first start the game, you're given a message that reads, "This game is a narrative experience that does not hold your hand." And sure enough, the game pretty much doesn't hold your hand. It sets you free in a big open world where you can go pretty much anywhere you want. Well, until you hit the invisible walls, that is, which happen to be right next to your linear path, preventing you from going anywhere you want. That's a letdown. To uncover the game's storyline, you have to walk around at your own leisure, and basically explore everything you see. It's an intriguing method of gameplay, and it makes you feel like a real detective, exploring curious, abandoned places, searching for evidence, solving mysteries. If you like art games, and I hate even using a phrase like that, but it's a phrase that definitely means something. Or better yet, if you like games like Dear Esther, or Passage, or I don't know, Gone Home? Games where you walk around and shit, you know what I'm talking about. Then you'll probably like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. It's a game that tries to go against the grain, to be different and unpredictable, and visually beautiful while doing it. And for what it's worth, I really liked it. Yeah, I didn't keep this short at all. Among the Sleep. This is a game about a baby! And a creepy talking teddy bear.
I'm excited.
When I first heard about Among the Sleep on Kickstarter, I thought it was really gonna suck. I don't know, something about a horror game where you play as a baby crawling around on the floor, it just sounded gimmicky and dumb. But, much to my surprise, Among the Sleep turned out to be a rather exceptional horror game, and a pretty damn beautiful one at that. In the game, you play as a baby being put to bed by his mother, accompanied, I should add, by the coolest opening credits I think I've ever seen in a video game. After a few weird, surreal events, you somehow end up crawling out of your crib and exploring the house. And from there, everything starts to get crazy. It doesn't take long for the world around you to start metaphysically falling apart. And after a while, you go from exploring an ordinary house to exploring creepy, dark corridors, long, hazy caverns, and of course, strange, ethereal, dreamlike fantasy worlds. Also, there's a scary monster chasing after you. despite the vanishing of Ethan Carter, I'm not sure if I can really call this game a horror game. I mean, there are a few good jump scares in it, and the monster can actually kill you if it catches you, but the game doesn't ever really feel focused on that. Instead, it feels more focused on imagery, and storytelling, and symbolism. In fact, remember that game Popo and Yo from 2012? That game where you play a little kid who befriends a monster in a big dream world, and it's all supposed to be like drenched in symbolism and hidden meaning and stuff? Well, that's what Among the Sleep is like. It's basically the exact same thing. Only difference is, this game does it better. I don't think I'd recommend Among the Sleep if you're looking for a real horror game. I mean, the gameplay's nothing special. It's not very scary, and I do think it's a little overpriced on Steam. But if you appreciate good storytelling, good world building, and just plain art, Among the Sleep is unlike almost anything else out there. It's art. Beautiful, beautiful art. And then a jump scare happened. Alien Isolation. Yeah, you knew this game would be on the list. The game that Sega made just so everyone would forgive them for their hideous transgressions is such a good horror game, I'd almost call it important. Finally, the mainstream game industry learned how to make a horror game. A real horror game, none of that Dead Space 3 bullshit. Or Resident Evil 6. Like anyone else who wastes most of their life away on the internet, I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. The original Alien from 1979 is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And you know what? I've always thought it was better than any of the sequels. The creepy, subtle horror of the original movie, the fear of space, fear of evil, fear of the unknown. You know, Alien Isolation may just be the first thing to ever really get the original Alien. And I mean that. There's only one alien in this game. Well, for the most part. I mean, there's more than one, but most of the game you're just hiding from one. And God, it treats that alien the way it should be treated. Like a monster. Like the monster. The most important thing in the game, and by far the most dangerous force you're reckoning with. Also, the Sevastopol space station is awesome. One of the best looking, best sounding settings you'll ever explore in a horror game. Obviously, the game borrows heavily from Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and a lot of other recent horror games that came before it. And I guess you could say it's not all that original itself, but God! It does everything so well it hurts. Literally hurts. I don't even care about the main characters being kinda dull and the story being kinda boring. Complaining about this game feels like complaining about an ice cream sundae just because it isn't sprinkled with $20 bills or something. It's a good game. It's polished, it's scary, it's true to its source material, and it works perfectly. And like I said, the best thing about Alien Isolation is that it's important. It's very important. It marks the return of true survival horror in the AAA game industry. For as long as the AAA game industry lasts, that is. It represents a comeback, a resurgence of tension, of suspense and subtlety. I think we can look forward to some truly amazing horror games from here on out. Because if a company as dim-witted as Sega finally gets it, I think it's safe to say everyone else should get it too. Or not. PT. Okay, yes, I know PT is just a playable teaser. That's why it's called PT. And I know it's just a short precursor to a much bigger, likely better game. But you know what? It's about as long as half the other games on this list. It's more creative and stunning than half the other games on this list. And the final product, Silent Hills, has been confirmed to have absolutely nothing to do with it. So there you go. Now go watch Caddy's video on it. I have nothing else to say. Here's a fetus dying in a sink. Also, here's some Pyramid Head porn. It can't hurt you if it's not real.
I really don't want to talk about this. I really don't. Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yep, Five Nights at Freddy's, in my opinion, is the second best horror game of 2014. Now hold on, let me explain. A lot of people probably think I hate this game. You've all been waiting for me to do a video on it, to love it and praise it for being an amazing horror game, or to make fun of it and tear it to pieces for being a shitty, overrated piece of crap. But here's the thing. I don't hate Five Nights at Freddy's, and I don't really love it either. I'm just sick of it. I think people who love Five Nights at Freddy's are getting fucking annoying. They need to stop drawing furry fox porn and move on to something else before the internet collapses from its own inevitable stupidity. And as for the people who hate Five Nights at Freddy's, well, I think they're being idiots who have no idea what they're talking about. First of all, why is it everyone seems to hate this game? Well, the most common thing I've heard is that it's because the game is, quote-unquote, nothing but jump scares. But I'd have to disagree with that. This game's not nothing but jump scares. I mean, the only real jump scares in it are the death animations. Like, they're a penalty for dying. They only happen when you die. It's not the game's fault if you're getting jump scared over and over again. It's your fault for letting those hideous Chuck E. Cheese rejects into your room. The fact of the matter is, Five Nights at Freddy's is not a bad game. In fact, it's a pretty impressive game. It managed to scare everyone on the internet when it first came out, in a way they'd never quite been scared before. Say what you want about how repetitive it gets, but you know what? I fucking love horror games that can manage to give us a new, unique type of monster to be afraid of, rather than just dishing out the usual zombies or mutants or whatever. No, instead, this is a game where you're being hunted by giant mechanical animals who want to stuff your body into a Freddy Fazbear suit. If that's not original, I don't know what is. It's probably more original than half the other games on this list, and it doesn't even take itself seriously enough, in my opinion, to even be criticized.
Be sure to check the door light. You might only have a few seconds to react. Not that you would be in any danger, of course. I'm not implying that.
And yeah, I suppose you could say it's too simple, too small, or too shallow for what it is. And yes, it does get really old really fast. But at the same time, this is a $5 horror game on Steam. Should we really be analyzing a $5 horror game on Steam this extensively? I mean, come on. It's simple. It's supposed to be simple. It plays more like an arcade game than a horror game after all. And hey, for how it plays, it still puts me on the edge of my seat. I mean, god, that's a lot more than I can say for a game like Slender the Arrival. Slender the Arrival never put me on the edge of my seat. It just bored me to death. Five Nights at Freddy's, at least, gave me a challenge. And that's all that matters. Also, judging from that video Gaijin Goomba uploaded about fear and subjectivity, I think it's safe to say that what scared most people about Five Nights at Freddy's were the monsters, not the jump scares. So there you have it. What else can I say but... And now for the number one pick. No one in the world is gonna agree with me. No, I'm afraid to say my favorite horror game of 2014 is not Five Nights at Freddy's. And it's not Five Nights at Freddy's 2 either. No, my favorite horror game of 2014 is actually a tiny little RPG Maker game that no one's heard of and no one cares about. It moves. Well, okay, to be fair, Markiplier did play the demo of this game, and I suppose people have heard about it somewhat, but whatever. Do you guys remember my Yume Nikki review? Remember how I sneered at RPG Maker in that video? For an RPG Maker game? Yeah, this game was made with RPG Maker. Imagine that. Yeah, well, I kinda sorta totally regret doing that. I love RPG Maker games, especially Yume Nikki. In fact, there's something I never told you about that game. Back when I reviewed Yume Nikki, and called it Yume Nikki because I had no idea how to pronounce that shit, I tried to review it in a very professional way. I wanted to talk about it carefully, in a way that wouldn't really ruin it for anyone who hadn't played it. But you know what I didn't tell you? Yume Nikki is actually my favorite game I've ever played. My favorite game. Of all time. And RPG Maker games, despite what they lack, are actually pretty freaking captivating. You can do a lot of artistically moving things with RPG Maker, and It Moves is no exception. This game follows the story of a young boy who has a monster living in his bedroom. Each night the boy goes to sleep, he has a strange nightmare, and after each nightmare, he wakes up to find the monster lying in his bed, breathing down his neck. And that's it. That's all there is to it. It's a short game, and there's not a whole lot that happens in it. So why is this my favorite horror game of the year? Well, it's hard to explain. I think, honestly, I just loved it. I loved it more than any other game I played last year. And like Bunker 16, it's so short that I can't really show you what happens in it. And I know, you're probably upset that I didn't put something bigger and better here, like The Evil Within. Maybe you're disappointed, maybe you're unsatisfied. But hey, you clicked on this video to see an opinion, to see a biased list of games by a biased individual. You clicked on this video because you wanted to know what games from last year were my favorite, and which ones were worth playing. And I guess I could just say, go play this game. It's worth playing. It's amazing. But hell, how am I supposed to know what you're going to like? We're all different. We like different stuff. And we're obviously not all gonna look at the same game and see the exact same thing. I can't tell you what the best horror game of 2014 is. All I can tell you is, this was my favorite one. It was a game that reached inside me and touched me in a weird, haunting, screwed up way. It was a game I wanted more from. A game I didn't want to end because I was enjoying it so much for what it was. And God, in the end, that's probably the best complaint I could ever have.
Also, it's January! Happy New Year! I'm late for everything. The end.
Hey, thanks for watching my incredibly late comeback video. If you didn't notice, I had to steal a lot of footage for this video because I didn't want to have to go back through games that I already played earlier in the year just for the end of the year video, and yeah. So here are all the channels I stole footage from. You can click on them and go watch their video game footage, because fun.
Here's a little bonus room, 'cause I know you've had it tough. And here's a little bonus tune about collecting real cool stuff. Yes, here's a little bonus room where you can play. Don't be frightened, don't run away. You can linger, 'cause I'm your video friend. Think of me as a father figure with a hand to lend. Here's a little bonus room where you don't have to worry.